Hi, I'm Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode number 374, and the 43rd episode in our Edge of the Napkin series. And today's idea is simple. It's a familiar path that won't take you somewhere new. And it sounds obvious until you realize how often the familiar path is the one that worked. The discipline worked, the pressure worked, the control worked, the ability to step in, solve the problem, hold the room, carry the load, and keep things moving all worked. It got you here. And that's exactly why it is so hard to let go. Because the problem isn't always that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes the challenge is that you're doing something right for a version of your life, business, or leadership that you've already outgrown. And that is where so many proven entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers get stuck. Not in failure, in success habits that have not been updated or upgraded. The old model still feels safe because it has evidence. The new model feels uncertain because it only has a picture, but that picture really matters. And that is where Focus, Align, Act begins. And I'm going to draw the picture for you about how you can see the movie like a 3D picture that you're already inside. See it, feel it, hear it, taste it, smell it even, and then align and bring that picture back into now into your body and then act 100% all in and release the outcome. Because this process is there to teach our nervous system that the next version of us is already here. So today, we're talking about the familiar path, why it feels so safe, and why it may no longer be enough, and why where you are going may not require a better plan as much as it requires a different and upgraded version of you. So let's dive in. Every conversation I had this week had a very similar shape to it. There were competent people, really good, accomplished, successful, proven entrepreneurs, leaders, great people, just stuck. And not stuck because they were doing something wrong. Actually, that would be sort of easier to figure out, right? They were stuck, though, here because they were doing something right for a version of life that they'd already outgrown. And that's a different kind of stuck. Because when something used to work, it earns our trust. The discipline, the pressure, the hands on leadership, problem solving, carrying more, waiting, pressure, the deal by deal or back to back thinking worked. It all worked. And that's definitely why it's so hard to question. Most people think that the familiar path is safe because it's proven. But proven for the past is not the same thing as right for the future. And that's what I kept on seeing. People weren't missing ability or intelligence. They weren't short on work ethic or anything like that. They were missing an updated model, a new way of operating, a new internal agreement, a new version of themselves that matched the life, business, and leadership they were now asking for, especially for the future. One of the founders I talked to this week said something that really stayed to me. I asked him to picture the next version of the business, not the numbers or the org chart or the growth plan, but just the feeling of it. And the first word that came out of his mouth was time. And that was the whole clue because the business he'd already built required him to essentially be everywhere, partially in every seat, partially in every decision, every connection, every relationship. The model that used actually worked. It really actually helped to build the company, but it's also become his ceiling. The next version of the business cannot be built by the same person sitting in every single chair. And this is something that many founders get wrong. They replace themselves with one person, but replacing the founder often takes many people because they are occupying so many seats. This founder knew it. And that's the strange part. Most of the time, when we're in these situations, the new model is already visible. You can feel it before you can even explain it. You can sense the difference before you've actually structured your life around it. You know when the old way is creating pressure instead of momentum. You know when being involved in everything has become a bottleneck. You even know when solving every problem yourself is creating dependency on us. You know when waiting for the conditions to be right is just another form of staying still. You know when carrying everyone else is no longer connection, and it's certainly no longer calm. And you know when the opportunity has outgrown the way you've always funded it, led it, or held it. You just know. You feel it. But you just haven't acted from that new knowledge yet. And that's the line. And that's this whole conversation today. The challenge is not what you're doing. The challenge is that where you are going requires the updated version of you. It's not different, it's just refined. And that's why so many proven entrepreneurs get foggy in this middle, this transition period between what worked and what's going to lead into the future. They're not beginners. They're not lost. You have amazing evidence that your instincts work. And most importantly, you have results, stories, the scars and dents that you've earned along the way. And most importantly, you have credibility. So when the old model stops producing the same feeling, we start assuming that something's wrong with the business, or maybe even worse, something's wrong with the team or the market or the timing or even us. And sometimes parts of those can be true, but it's incomplete. Many times, though, the real friction is our identity. The person who built the last chapter is being asked to become something different for the next one. And that doesn't imagine or doesn't even begin with abandoning who you are. It means updating the habits that were built for survival, pressure, urgency, control, or protection. And some success habits expire. That doesn't necessarily make them bad. It makes them complete. They did their job. The grinding discipline that once created all that progress may be creating pressure, not just for you, but for everyone around you. The instinct to step into every gap may now be preventing other people from growing. The ability to read every emotional current in the room and then regulate it or embody it yourself may be keeping you from being present in your own life. The habit of waiting until things feel safer may now be the very thing that's keeping you unsafe. These are not character flaws. They're old success patterns that deserve the respect of anything that brought you here. They also just don't get to drive forever. So the question becomes really simple. What model are you still loyal to because it worked once? And that's where I would start. Not with a goal, not with a bigger plan, and maybe not even with a list of another bunch of things to do. Start by naming the old model. Start it and name it without any shame. The pressure model, the control model, the fix everything model, the wait until ready model, the one deal at a time model, the back to back everything model. The model has to be named before it can be updated, upgraded, or possibly even replaced because unnamed patterns run the room. And once you name it, you can start to see when it takes over. You can hear it in our language. You can feel it in your chest. You can notice it in your calendar. You can see it in the conversations that you keep on avoiding. Then you can picture the future version first. And this is where most people get it backward. They ask, what do I need to fix? And that question keeps the old model in charge. The better question is, what do I want? What am I not what am I trying to avoid, but what do I want? Not what pain am I trying to get away from? What do I really want? What is the next chapter? What is the 3D movie that I can put myself in that I can see, I can feel, I can hear, I can even smell and taste myself inside? What does the person who's already solved that problem look like, feel like, act like? How do they move? What do they stop caring? What do they stop proving? What do they no longer need to control? What did they do before they feel ready? And if you stay with that, it can change the room because the future version is not usually louder. It's usually cleaner, clearer, calmer, more congruent, simpler. And they're not trying to earn the next chapter from the old one. They're acting from the next chapter now. And that is the basis of focus, align, act. Focus on what you want, not the thing that you're escaping, not the pressure that you're trying to outrun, the picture, the 3D movie that I talked about that you can see, you can feel, you can hear, you can smell, you can taste yourself inside. The more sense, the better. The version of life that already has a shape, even if it doesn't have proof yet. Then align, bring yourself right back to now. Stand in front of the mirror and say it, feel it, believe it before there's evidence. Say to yourself, looking yourself in the mirror, I believe in myself. I love myself just the way I am. And even use that first person pronoun or second person pronoun. I love you just the way you are, not as fantasy, but as rehearsal. Bring the future into your body and bring it into your mind. Bring it into the present moment where the old model usually likes to take over, and that's the bridge. The focus gives you the picture, that 3D movie. Align brings the picture here. Then act. Do one thing, not when you feel ready or when the evidence is complete, when the room has made it safe. Act even if you're not ready and act all in 100% completely and completely release the outcome. Because the action is not there to produce a result. The action is to prove your nervous system that the next version of you is already here. And that last part matters. Release the outcome. That doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that the action is clean just the way it is. It means that you're not letting the result to decide whether or not the identity was real. You're not waiting for the result to prove that the identity was real. And that's where most people get trapped. They act from the new model once. They stare at the outcome. Did it work? Did it respond? Did money show up? Hey, did they approve this? Or did the world give me some proof? And if the proof doesn't arrive fast enough, we crawl back into the old model. But the old model always has evidence, and that's why it feels safe. The new model begins before the evidence. It begins as focus. It lands in alignment and becomes real through action. And then you release the outcome and act again and again and again and again. And that is how identity starts to move, not as a declaration, as evidence, small evidence that you create, repeated evidence that you make, embodied evidence that you absorb. One call, one conversation, one page of the playbook, one decision delegated, one contribution made without trying to control the return, one moment where you notice the emotional load and choose not to pick it up. One step from the new model, and that is enough to begin. Not enough to finish, enough to begin. So the whole idea is that you're pointing upward in the same direction, in a different altitude. You don't need to change the dream. You don't need to change the business, and you certainly don't need to change the people around you. But you may need to change the altitude you're leading from. The same path at a higher altitude is not the same path anymore. You see different things. You stop reacting to every pump in the road. You stop confusing urgency with importance. You stop mistaking control for care. You stop proving that the old version of you can still survive because it doesn't need to. You can let go of it. You start giving the new version of you evidence that it is allowed to lead. And that is the challenge this week. Name the old model, focus on what you want, bring it into the present moment, look into the mirror, see yourself, appreciate yourself just the way you are. Then act from that place. Act even if you are not ready, because you are anyway. Act all in, act completely and release the outcome, not because the old way failed, because it succeeded. And now it's complete. The familiar path is comfortable because it remembers who you were. But where you are going requires someone you haven't fully become yet. But that is the good news here, that the person is already visible to you. You have felt it inside you. You have heard that voice inside you. You've seen the shape of the life that you're creating. And the question is whether or not you're going to act from that version before the proof arrives or not. So write it on a napkin and share it. Create some momentum out around it. Tag it with the hashtag paper napkin wisdom, because ultimately, these are ideas that are small enough to fit on a napkin and large enough, immense enough to change your world. Make it a great day. I believe in you.